Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, and welcome to this third and closing plenary session of this year's ITF, which will focus on inclusive planning for healthier cities. My name is Geraldine de Bastian, and I am honored to moderate the session. Shortly, I will be welcoming different experts to the floor to share insights on what it takes to plan an inclusive and healthy city, both from the perspective of different interest groups and citizens, as well as from the policymaker perspective. After our panel discussion, we're looking forward to presenting the ITF Young Researcher of the Year Award. However, to start off the session, we are honored to have received a welcome address by the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, which we'd like to share with you now.
Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, the transport systems we use each day help open the world to us. But for all of their benefits, they're also far too dangerous, polluting, and wasteful. In cities which house more than half the world's population, rapid motorization brings greenhouse gases, air pollution, fossil fuel reliance, and the risk of death or injury. In many cities, pedestrians and cyclists share roads with high-speed traffic, increasing the risk of crashes. We call on all governments to make a step change to make urban design and transport safer and greener. The Global Plan of Action for the United Nations Decade of Road Safety 2021 to 2030 calls for a fundamental shift in how we approach mobility. This includes a move towards active modes of transportation, such as walking and cycling, as well as public transport. Improving urban design to protect and promote health and well-being demands that we work across sectors, guided by policies that connect the health of humans and our environment. Thank you all for your continued commitment to a healthier, safer, fairer, and more sustainable future. I thank you.
So we'd like to kick off our panel now, and I'll just briefly explain the format, as it is going to take place in two halves. In the first half, we're going to focus on different stakeholder perspectives, in particular those of vulnerable groups and persons with special needs, and yes, their perspective on what makes a healthier city and how they would like to be included in the planning process. In the second half of the session, we're going to deep dive into the policy perspective and hear from different cities how they are approaching the topic and dealing with these issues and engaging in inclusive planning processes. After these two interview segments, I would like to open for all of your questions and comments and interventions, so looking forward to including all of you in the discussion. Now, allow me to introduce the two speakers for the first half of the panel, both of whom represent different interest group perspectives. Firstly, a warm welcome to Matt McCannon, who is an entrepreneur, a web developer, and a software engineer. He is the CEO and founder of Access Earth. After making personal experiences what it means to arrive in a place that has marked itself as disability-friendly or accessible, and finding out this is not the case, Matt decided to launch his own platform that can be used to easily create accessibility information by allowing people to upload their own information and provide feedback on places that they have visited. Welcome, Matt. And a very warm welcome to Jill Warren, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the European Cyclist Federation, a Brussels-based civil society NGO. Together with a team of skilled and passionate experts, Jill advocates the European and global levels for more and better cycling and sustainable, healthy means, that cycling as a sustainable and healthy means, not just for leisure, but for transport within the cities as well. In addition to the 70-member organization, ECF networks also include cities and regions for cyclists, national Eurovelo coordination centers, and the Cycle Friendly Employers Consortium, Scientists for Cycling, and the World Cycling Alliance, as well as Women for Cycling. So really the organization to bring together all of the perspectives around the world of cycling. Welcome to the stage, Jill. It's great to have you both here and your perspectives represented, which were also mentioned in the welcoming address as really being key to this conversation. So I'd like to start off our discussion by just hearing your key priorities. What, from your perspectives, makes a healthy city? Maybe you can give me 3 adjectives each.
I think from my perspective, it would be trust, communication, and welcoming.
Jill, what would be yours?
Yeah. Safe, inclusive, and livable.
Nice. And we'd like to take apart what that means and how that can feature in policies, or should feature in policies, in the course of our interview. Maybe we can start with your perspective, Jill, and that of the cyclists. Can you tell me, how do you feel a city needs to be redesigned in order to meet your interest group needs?
Okay, so I think it's very important to emphasize that cities need to be redesigned for more healthy mobility, and this means redesigning them away from car dominance and in favor of active, healthy mobility.
And what would that change then in terms of public space?
Well, it's a more equitable distribution of public space. It's public space for everyone. It's safe public space. It's, and it's undisputed in terms of the benefits that brings. We've heard about, clearly, the health benefits, but let me just run through them because they do bear repeating. You get cleaner air for everybody, not just the cyclists or the pedestrians, through lowered CO2 emissions. You get fewer road deaths and serious injuries through safer infrastructure for everybody and fewer motorized vehicles on the road causing crashes. You get healthier and happier citizens who have more activity in their daily lives and increased health and mental well-being. You have much more livable cities and towns that people want to spend time in and be part of. And you have decreased congestion and noise and air pollution. You have better rural connectivity and leisure options. You have more vibrant local economies where cyclists and pedestrians spend more of their money locally. And you have more inclusive societies with greater access to places of cultural and job opportunities for everyone.
Thank you. Are those all shared perspectives, Matt? How would you redesign the city in order to meet your interest group needs?
I think I echo pretty much everything that Jill said, but I also want to add as well that it's not a case of just bringing in a number of stakeholders that match certain perspectives. I think what really we try and get across is that everyone's needs are different. And accessibility doesn't mean just disability. It means parents with prams, it means older people, it means people who are temporarily injured. It's making sure that the entire city is represented at its base level in terms of inclusion, safety, and welcoming as well.
And how would you reimagine public space in a city if it were to be more inclusive towards the needs just outlined?
Aside from looking at making the buildings and everything that a city has to offer accessible, not just from a physical standpoint, because I think one of the things I really want to get across is that accessibility, it's more than just a ramp, because from the disability perspective, I'm here with my walking frame and having cerebral palsy, but 80% of disabilities are invisible. And I think a really sort of inclusive city really knows that from a human perspective as well. Because if you make someone feel welcoming and respectful of their needs, it's you make them happier, and when they're happier, they spend more money, which is a benefit to the city as a whole.
And this is why I feel like welcoming was a really beautiful word to use in your opening statement, because it's one thing to feel like, okay, you've been considered, but you're still a burden on society, or whether to feel that you're welcome the way you are, anywhere you go.
That's exactly it. And I think that's really what we want to try and get across here. It's about independence, right? And too many times we've heard from people that, oh, we only go to the same one or two places within a city because that's what we know, and we're afraid to venture out and to experience more. And I think having that level of sort of welcomingness to know that you can come as you are, essentially.
Nice. So I just came from another session where we focused on the situation of workers, and there it was found that COVID-19, the pandemic, caused, let's say, even starkening of conditions for workers in the transport sector. So that is true, of course, but at the same time, it also opened up some perspectives to new opportunities, what city centres could look like. So perhaps some of the positive effects also coming out of this tragedy that the pandemic has been. What changed? What's the potential that changed during COVID, Jill?
I think, first of all, the lockdowns and the really quiet, empty streets really laid bare just how much space in our cities we normally devote to car traffic and car parking. And it was an opportunity for people to get out and use their streets in a different way and to view them in a different way. And also, cities that already had active mobility strategies and plans were able to accelerate these during the pandemic to enable more cycling and walking for various purposes. For example, to enable more social distancing with a view to coming out of lockdown and not having traffic gridlock, or if people were hesitant about using public transport, then more active mobility was enabled. We tracked these developments at my organization, and some observations just from that. So first of all, the cities that already had plans in place could accelerate these to put in temporary infrastructure and things very quickly. But also, cities not known for being everyday cycling cities experimented and did these kind of things, and also experienced something that they hadn't before, which was very encouraging to see, and that's laid the groundwork for some more permanent changes going forward. But at the same time, cities that have less of a culture of experimentation, or less of a culture of trying things out, or more strict rules about test infrastructure and things like that, had, generally speaking, less interventions like pop-up cycle lanes. And there, for me, notable countries there were places like Germany or Scandinavia, where Berlin being a notable exception in Germany. Capital cities tend to be a bit more progressive than the rest of their countries anyway. And then other pandemic experiments like reallocating streets in different ways, like for outdoor dining, was also quite a revelation for people that we don't have to have all those parking spaces. We can have these little parklets for dining and use our streets in other ways that benefit the economy and the people living there.
Yes, it was overdue in Berlin, so high time. So I'm glad we did a tiny bit of catching up during the pandemic. This is my hometown. You used the word safety in your initial 3 adjectives. And of course, during the high time of the pandemic, bike riding felt like the safest mode of transportation. At the same time, safety is, of course, one of the key concerns taking a bike. So maybe you can just elaborate on why safety is such a key aspect and how you feel things are progressing.
We cannot overstate the importance of safety because it is so key. Study after study shows that if you ask people, why don't you cycle, or why don't you cycle more, that the number one answer of the answers they give is always going to be, I don't feel safe enough doing it. So it's key. And I like to say to people, if you want to know whether the cycling infrastructure in your city is safe enough or not, ask yourself the question, would you allow a 10 or 12-year-old child to cycle on it alone? And if the answer is no, your infrastructure is not safe enough and you have work to do. So it's a very simple measure for thinking about, is it safe, is it not? And if it isn't, then you need to think about what to do about it.
Thank you. I'd like to also ask this question in your direction, Matt, because this is just an assumption of mine that maybe for some of the persons that you were representing also in your interest group, COVID brought even more concerns, and especially now in the sort of semi-post-COVID phase we're in, having the safety to take public transport with falling mask mandates. I'm sure this is an issue.
I think so, and I think that there was an interesting survey done by the Centre for Access to Football in Europe, CAFE, on the impact of COVID on large events, and it was found that 87% of fans with disabilities felt that they didn't feel safe enough to take public transport, and that they would be taking private transport to these events. And I think it's about building back, and one of the threads throughout the pandemic on the Smart Cities events that we were attending was that it's about building back consumer confidence. And I think that's to know that, we're not just going to go back to how things were. We're going to take the best parts from this. It could be something as simple as social distancing has automatically made shops more accessible for people who use mobility devices or people who are visually impaired. Collection services outside local businesses have also helped for people with social anxieties. But also there's a level of that communication needs to continue with everyone within the city, because while the outdoor dining was great from a business perspective and great from everything else, I mean, maybe not in the likes of Dublin with the amount of rain we get, but it's things like the parking spaces. So in a lot of cases, there were examples of wheelchair parking spots being used up because they tend to be that much larger, so businesses were taking them as an example to put in more tables. But then they weren't being properly reallocated, and they weren't being communicated effectively to the population that if they were allocated, where were they? So I think it's about continuing that thread, right? And I think COVID has really given us that opportunity.
So where should we be looking now? Key points to improve access and accessibility, which include also safety, and how do we make sure that this is happening not just in sort of more affluent cities, but really a global process?
I think it's to make sure that there are organizations and there are activist groups all around the world that are doing fantastic work, and they exist in every single community. I mean, there's a lot of, for example, informal transport in a lot of larger cities. And, it's about accessing those communities and listening to the people as well. So it's not just an example of getting a focus group together from one different representative. It's if you can bring in almost an umbrella organization that can help to advocate and bring in those voices of as many different needs as possible.
So I would like segueing slowly into the policy conversation. I would like to know from both of you, where do you already have a seat at the table? Like to present exactly these kind of points and arguments. Where are you already engaged in policy and planning processes?
So advocacy and advocacy in terms of getting the right conditions for the policies and the budgets that matter, that's our bread and butter. That's what we do. Do we have the seat at the table that we would always like to have? Unfortunately, not. On the one hand, cycling is cool these days. Everybody wants to talk about it. It's something that's really coming into its own. On the other hand, we have nothing like the lobby of the automotive or the aviation or the shipping or the other industries, and as a result, we don't get a seat at all of those tables that they would get. Case in point, the COP26 last year. So I was there, NGO observer, with my badge walking around. But on the transport day, there were 3 speeches by people from automotive companies in the plenary session. We didn't have a seat at that table. Where were the cyclists there? Well, it was the activists outside with This Machine Fights Climate Change, and it was us, running around with our petition and the 350 signatories to that, which did help to get that last-minute sentence in the declaration about recognizing the importance of active travel and wider system transformation, et cetera. But why did it have to be a last-minute thing like that? Why couldn't it have been thought about and integrated and, truly included from the very beginning, given that millions and millions of people the world over cycle? And, this is a legitimate form of transportation and ought to be treated as such in our policies and our thinking. So, no, we don't have the seat that we want quite yet, although we are making progress and we're certainly banging down the doors and being loud. But, a lot more needs to be done.
Thank you. Those are really good examples also to show, the power, of course, of other more industrial savvy players, let's say. Matt, I'd like to ask you the same question. Where do you have a seat at the table?
I think it really varies, right? So from a local level, sometimes it can be seen as almost a box-ticking exercise. You need to have a wheelchair user, you need to have someone with visual impairment on the panel, and then invariably they get spoken at for about an hour, right? Their opinions aren't really listened to. The engineer comes in with their plan already in place, and this is more a case of this is what we have to do, as opposed to being open to active communication. And it really extends not just from a local level, but also from an international level. I mean, to go back to COP26, I don't know if you all remember Karine El-Rahar, the Water and Energy Minister for Israel, and how, as a wheelchair user, she was essentially refused access to an event because there was a miscommunication as to how she could actually get into and access the arena. And if that can happen at such an important event, and also the irony being it was less than a month before the International Day of People with Disabilities, that it's just something that has to happen from all aspects of society, and to make sure, again, that it's not just to move from something that you have to do to just something that just makes sense, right? Because universal design is just that. It's universal. It benefits everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So, final question for this round. Where do you work together, and where do you also see yourselves in competition? You're obviously representing two sort of different parts of the conversation that make sense to probably represent as one argument in some ways, but maybe not in all times. So how is collaboration versus competition amongst different interest groups and stakeholders in this field like?
Well, I think collaboration is key, and I think when you truly reprioritize the space, reallocate the space, and make it more equitable, you make it more equitable for everybody, not just the cyclists or the pedestrians or the disabled, really for everybody. And so in that sense, we're allies. And I would hope to not see us as competitors, but being sensitive to the needs of everybody, can only help all of us.
Which goes well with the universal design argument you just made, Matt.
Absolutely. I mean, collaboration is absolutely key. It's like, yes, there are some areas where competition can help to breed innovation. But like, in a sense, if you're all working towards the same goal of making the cities universally accessible, then yes, collaboration absolutely outweighs the benefits of competition for sure.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for this part of the discussion. I just want to remind our audience that we'll be accepting questions for all panelists, so also, of course, for the two of you later on. Let's have a big round of applause for you now. So as I mentioned earlier, in this next part of the panel, we really want to focus on the policy perspective and also zoom in on what some of the cities are currently doing to be inclusive in their planning and to make sure that they are healthy cities. And for this session, I would now like to warmly welcome on stage Karen van Klusen, who was appointed as Secretary General of Polis in September 2014, after having been the network's research director for 8 years. Prior to that, she worked at manager of Access Eurocities and as a project manager as Lazam Verkeer, a Belgian Centre for Mobility Management. Since 1998, Karen has been involved in European urban transport networking and policy activities and EU research and innovation projects covering a wide range of mobility topics. She's also been a speaker and a moderator at many events on this topic and advising different cities on this. And it's great to have a wealth of experience on the panel. Welcome, Karen. I would also like to warmly welcome Tord Sundquist, who's been a politician since 1979, and during this time he also worked for the Swedish Social Insurance Agency. Since the general elections of 2018, Mr. Sundquist is the mayor of Jönköping, the municipality in Sweden. The city of Jönköping won the 2001 Access City Award, which is organized by the European Commission together with the European Disability Forum and as one of the European Disability Strategy Actions. So it's great to have you here as well to learn from your experience, Tord. And I would also like to warmly welcome Gibette Camas, who is the Director of Development and International Relations for Transport in the metropolitan area of Barcelona, the public transport operator of most of the bus and metro networks of the Barcelona metropolitan area. Her work is focusing on developing new projects for the company at international scale. And before joining TMB, Gilberte has been also working in the transport sector with international organizations such as the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank, as well as the transport operator from France, RATP. Welcome to the stage, Gilberte. So, Karen, you have this wealth of experience and also, a global overview. So I would love to start this part of the conversation by asking you, can you give us a little bit of an oversight of where are certain dynamics happening? What cities are fast on their way to becoming healthier cities, and what are the driving forces? And on the counterpart to that, what are also the barriers holding other cities back?
Thank you for that question. Well, when we focus as a start maybe on the driving forces, I would say it's the multiple challenges that we are facing in the transport field in our cities and regions, and there are quite a few. Of course, there's climate change, air pollution, congestion, road safety. They've all been mentioned throughout the past days. We're all trying to do something about it. And then there's, on top of that now, the need for a green recovery from the pandemic. So we need to go towards a radical transport transformation, and many keys for that transformation are held by cities and regions. And on top of that, it needs to be a just transition, which is the topic, of course, of this summit. An important tool that our cities are using to make that a reality is the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan. It really allows for cities to adopt an integrated approach to tackle multiple challenges in one go through integrated packages of measures that ideally tick several boxes, but also to adopt a long-term vision that goes beyond election cycles and really sets very clear targets across these different societal challenges. And then obviously, in addition to tackling those societal challenges, we also want to make sure that our citizens have good services to deal with. So what we see happening right now is a shift on multiple fronts. If we want a sustainable urban mobility ecosystem, we need that radical modal shift away from the private car in city cores. And we need all sustainable mobility modes really to join forces and together offer an alternative to that monomodal perspective that we still see way too much in our city centers. So multimodality and intermodality is something that cities are trying to facilitate through digital and physical integration. Then we need a motor shift away from dirty vehicles towards clean vehicles, but also right-sized vehicles. We don't need big vehicles in urban cores. They're dangerous. They take up too much space. Exactly. And talking about space, we need that space shift. Jill was talking about it as well. The reallocation of space is long overdue, and we're facing the legacy of decades of car-centric planning in our cities that we need to undo. We need to get that balance right. So that reallocation of space is something that is happening across many cities. We're giving the streets back to the people, so to say. And then finally, a cost shift. You know, incentives is one thing, and it's important, but we'll have to bring out the sticks as well, not just the carrots. And that might be politically sensitive and not necessarily very popular, but only if we start to internalize the external costs of polluting traffic to society, people will start to consider seriously the sustainable alternatives as well. And I think it's a false narrative to assume that this would harm those which are already the most vulnerable in society, because those are usually the ones that don't even own a car, but they are exposed to the most noise or the worst air quality. So we really need to bring out those pricing measures as well. And that's basically where we are today and what cities are trying to do.
And how to do that in the context of just transition is, of course, one of the key questions that we're looking at. Those were a lot of very helpful points to also inform this part of the conversation. So thank you for that. Let me just ask a quick follow-up question. How helpful do you think conceptual frameworks such as, let's say, the 15-minute city or other such ideas that are sort of uprising at the moment are to define strategy processes and have conversations in this area?
The concept of the 15-minute city is really gaining ground because it really links into this reallocation of space, into this idea of putting active travel at the heart of what a city should look like, and promoting proximity, let's say, within a 15-minute range of cycling and walking, and of course with public transport as the backbone as well. Then you have a whole range of innovations that are coming our way, and we are also trying to assess to what extent these innovations can help us solve the challenges that we are trying to solve. And there we believe very strongly in the governance of innovation, in public sector oversight, because all these technologies are coming with very big promises. They're all going to solve the issues that we've been talking about here. That's what they claim, or that's what they say. But commercial interests are not necessarily aligned with public interests, and what we believe is that we need to adopt the right regulatory frameworks that maximize opportunities, but also mitigate negative externalities, that policy goals are being supported but not undermined by these technologies. And we see that active interventions, also from the local level, are really needed in that respect.
Yes, absolutely. That is a very important point to make. So I would, of course, like to ask you both, how are you doing that? How are you balancing these interests, and how are you perhaps integrating such concepts into your city planning processes? So perhaps I can invite you both to talk me through what it takes or has taken to build a healthy city from your perspective, and how are you working with such frameworks? Would you like to begin, Tord?
Yes, thank you. The way that Jönköping City has worked is with a bottom-up approach within the organizations around disability issues and accessibility. We have been working with human rights area, children, gender equality, and so on. But I will focus now on the group with the disabilities. We have a strong civil rights society in Jönköping. There is an umbrella organization which consists of around 20 associations regarding different disabilities and diagnoses. The Jönköping Disability Rights Federation, it's called. That's our main partner, and them I will refer to in the following things. We have a political program for accessibility issues called the Society for All. When we created this program, all the department and politicians on all levels were involved, as well as representatives from the disability organization. We have a system for how we wanted to work with involvement from the civil rights society. And the Municipal Council Disability Issues is on the top of that hierarchy. Politicians from all the department meet representatives from the civil rights. Here is the citizen have an opportunity to raise accessibility issues directly with the politician, and of course to educate politicians about disabilities. So we have been working with that, and the Planning and Development Department had been working out a system to include the disability organization in their process from an early start. That's very important that you get in as early as possible. So we have a specific council to talk about more concrete issues. For example, what is being built, roads, parks, pedestrian crossings, and the representative can give their point of view from the perspective on a person with a first-hand experience on disabilities. So the earlier the citizens come into the process, the easier to affect the result, and it is important with the first-hand experience.
So this seat at the table that I was speaking of earlier with Jill and Matt is given in your planning situation. Is this an ongoing process, or was it more of a one-time process? Or do you involve these groups in sort of continuous planning processes or even monitoring processes?
Yeah, we have built up now this organization to proceed in the future too. So we are doing this with everything we are building, we are planning with the structure of the city, and of course the surrounding around it too. So the nature is also very important to get accessibility for the disability persons.
So congratulations, obviously, also to the award you won. From your very personal perspective, just summarize for me, perhaps in 1 or 2 sentences, and of course for everybody in the room, why did you win?
Well, I don't know really, but I think it was our work, our eager work to work together with the disability organizations and let them come in so early in the planning. So I think that was one of the reasons. I mean, we have still things we have to do in Jönköping. We are not perfect, not in any way. But it's important that you get all the disability organizations to see the problems and to tell the politicians and of course the civil servants about what has to be done. And often it's small things. I mean, costs hardly anything for a city. But it's very important that you get those small things too. And even bigger things, of course, not naturally. But when we are doing this, we have done it in the city, but also the access to nature. Of course, not all of nature, because that's impossible, but in certain parts of the nature around Jönköping, we have made paths with curbs that goes along the border of it, so you can, if you're visually impaired, you can feel with your stick. You don't get to roll off with a wheelchair off the paths and so forth. And it's in the petland and in the forests. So
Wow.
I think that's why.
Thank you for sharing those examples. I think that makes it even more tangible. And I think it's great to hear that it's not just the outcomes of what you produced, but also the way that you went about it that led you to win this award. So congratulations again for that. Gilbert, of course, as a Berliner, I already outed my hometown. I always look jealously to Barcelona and think, oh, I wish we could have all these amazing processes too. Can you talk us a little bit through your inclusive planning processes, how you are working together with different stakeholders, but also with some of these conceptual frameworks that Karen outlined?
Yes, thank you so much, Geraldine, and thank you to the ITF for inviting me today to talk about Barcelona, which, of course, a lot of people already know this city. I'm representing here actually the public transport operator from Barcelona, so we operate both the metro and bus networks of Barcelona, and we are also soon going to operate also bikes, actually a share bike service in 15 cities around Barcelona to complement actually our metro network also as a last mile service. So I think in Barcelona we have a long tradition of improving urban planning and make it a city accessible for all. And also particularly in the transport sector, we really have a focus on transport for all because we believe in human diversity from all of its perspectives, and we are really working hard to include it in all our new projects and also in our old projects. Let me give you one example. We have a metro network which is almost 100 years old. In 2 years from now, we will celebrate its 100th anniversary. And 92% of our stations, of our metro stations, are fully accessible. Of course, we still have a way to go, and we were talking with some of the other panelists actually that, of course, for our 100th anniversary, we want to be 100% accessible. But we have really made an effort since I think we could say even more than 30 years. Barcelona hosted the Olympic Games back in 1992, and since then, when we started with our first bus with a ramp to make it the public transport accessible, we have been working very hard within our company to include the work that the mayor was mentioning, also with all the stakeholders and all the associations, all the interest groups, to really take into account different kinds of groups and of disabilities. For example, for the visually impaired, in all our network also, we have installed also tags which give to the visually impaired all the information of how can you access to the trains, where you should be careful with different aspects that they may not be able to see. This is only an example, but simply to illustrate that there is a very hard work and that we have this accessibility team, which is involved in every new project that we have for public transportation in Barcelona, whether it is to improve the existing infrastructure, whether it is for new trains. We also recently got the Net Zero Award for the new trains that we have been constructing for the metro so that they are accessible for all. So we really try to take care of that and work with every single project in order to include all the interest groups. And it takes time, actually. It has been a maturity process, and it takes time also for each project to convince all the technical people that are there, okay, we need to take this time because it is a time that we are winning for afterwards to really have built accessible infrastructure for all and accessible transport for all.
Yeah, and congratulations. Those are also incredibly impressive achievements, especially also seeing the sort of this need for seamlessness in transportation between different modalities and thinking about that from a public transport point of view. I want to pick up on a couple of themes that were talked about in the first half of the conversation. And accessibility, of course, was a key issue there, and safety was also one. How are safety and sustainability connected in your view, Karen?
There are two sides of the same coin, I would say, and even though it seems strange, for a very long time they have been addressed in silos. There was a safety question and there was a sustainability question. But to echo what Jill was also saying, if your infrastructure is not safe, you're not going to empower sustainable modes of transport. So they really go hand in hand, and we see that now more and more they're being addressed in an integrated way, and that's needed if we want to really capitalize on the boom that we see also in terms of active travel, and if we want to make sure that those vulnerable road users are actually recognized as valuable road users that have the right to their dedicated space in the urban environment. So it all comes down to that reallocation of space again. Speed is an important factor that still plays a very important role, and I'm delighted to see that more and more of our cities are moving towards a default 30 kilometer per hour speed limit in our cities, and this is making a tremendous difference, and again is an incredible boost for the sustainable modes. Coming back to a subtle difference that you have in English, it's not just about safety, it's also about security. And it's also linking into some issues that Matt was mentioning in terms of personally feeling safe, not just in terms of safe infrastructure, but also in terms of personal security. And that's something that public transport, for example, is working hard on, and is linking into the gender dimension as well. The choices you make, the mobility choices you make also link into whether you feel personally safe and secure on public transport in urban space and the way it is designed. So this is something we also shouldn't forget about when we're talking about safety from a personal perspective as well, and not just from an infrastructure perspective. And finally, also picking up on a point that Jill made in terms of joining forces, and we're in this boat together, you know, use this boom in light mobility to call for more dedicated infrastructure for pedestrians, for cyclists, for e-scooters. Don't start fighting each other. Those really need to, come together and fight the elephant in the room, I would say, which is not a tiny e-scooter, for example, but is the SUV vehicle that has been taking up too much space.
So the gender perspective, also gender mainstreaming context of safety and security is something that you're also working on in Barcelona. Do you want to share some insights on that, Jill?
Yes, thank you, Geraldine. Actually, in Barcelona, we have prepared from TMB a global plan for human diversity. So actually, we address with this plan not only gender issues, but also other issues from other groups such as LGBTI. So, for example, we have established protocols to fight sexual harassment actually in the public transport network, and also against LGBTI phobia. So let me give you a recent example. We have been training agents from our staff, from metro staff, so working on our stations, actually to we have called them the purple agents, and they have been trained actually to be able also to address situations where there has been sexual harassment or LGBTI phobia. So this has been like a specific training because we really believe that we need to be there for the society, and we are an important stakeholder also within the society with all our public transport network, and we want to make sure that all users also feel safe and secure in our network. So this has been one of our last implementations.
Excellent, thank you. So maybe just one or two more questions before we open it up for comments and interventions. What are the resources that you need to do your planning processes, Thord? What kind of data needs does this include? And do you have these resources, or is this something that you're also working on with different stakeholders in order to gain this, this base that you need to work from?
Yeah, the most interesting thing we have to deal with, that is the examples we get from the people in Jönköping. We have a suggestion box on the website so there all people can give suggestions of what has to be done and how they want to do it. And on that website, we also have a page devoted to accessibility matters. So we put up a map made in collaboration with the Jönköping Disability Rights Federation on accessible businesses. So we have included the businesses in the town, the shop owners and all the businesses. So it's an inventory of all downtown businesses and how accessible they are from different perspectives. Mm-hmm. So the map is available for everyone online, and there's a program included that reads the map content, of course, out loud, though, in order to create access for visually impaired people. So that's one of the things we are doing, and we got a lot of suggestions from there.
That's wonderful also to hear about this openness in not just data gathering as an automated procedure or IoT that you get, but actually voices from people. So that's lovely. Thank you for that. What a great sentiment also to open to the floor. Let's hear some more voices from people. If you have questions or comments to the panel, please get ready. First of all, I'd like to though welcome Jill and Matt to perhaps comment on what's been said in this round, if there's something that you want to share. I'm sure a microphone will...
Could I just say something about accessibility in a broader perspective?
Yes, whilst the microphone is arriving, please do use this time, Thord.
Well, it's easy to just focus on the visual accessibility. Accessibility is not only what is physically planned, it's also what is happening between us people. Our norms about how we should look and act or functionality can create inaccessibility. Therefore, we think it's important to talk about norms. When we have created something that's called Normstorm in Jönköping, that's a part of the municipality's work for diversity, equality, and to create a more inclusive society. And that Normstorm allows students to critically evaluate norms in their everyday life. And every student aged 14 to 17 participate in this project as a part of their regular education plan. Throughout the project, the students learn about norms, especially destructive and discriminatory ones. The students then interpret, question, and challenge destructive norms of their choice through taking pictures or creating artwork, which are then presented in public exhibitions in public areas. So that's one way to look at accessibility.
And again, really make it open to involving all the people that live in your city.
Yes.
Thank you. Jill, Matt, would you like to comment on what's been said in this round?
Yeah, just very briefly that I heard a lot of things to like, and it just underscores, I think, the whole notion that we need this transformation in our cities, away from the car-centric way that it is now to a more inclusive and multimodal world.
Yeah, it's great to see that this perspective is being taken into account from all across the policy-making decision process. And also, more importantly as well, that the citizens are being involved in that conversation too.
There's a response.
Yeah. So these co-creation approaches are really important, and we also through sustainable urban mobility plans we make sure to embed that from day zero basically when making change. At the same time, the ongoing challenge for decision makers is to reconcile what individual citizens want with what the city as a whole needs, the greater good, and those two are also not necessarily aligned. Of course there are the specific needs and absolute needs from specific groups, but then there's the average citizen, let's say, and they tend to think, okay, not in my backyard. Let the other idiots take the bus so that I can, smoothly drive through the city center with my car. And I'd like to quote a politician from Brussels. It's Secretary of State of Urban Planning, Pascal Smet, and he always says, you have to make people happy against their own will. And that means you have to push through sometimes. People might be resistant to change, but when they see on the streets what that change actually implies, they will finally buy into it. And that's why also what's been happening during the pandemic has been very powerful, because trying out things, piloting things is really a very good way to win the hearts and minds of people. When they experience that actually it's not that bad in real life, they will buy into the change that you're trying to push through.
That's one thing, and of course, as this is a very difficult argument to have, I understand we don't have the time in all cases, but taking the educational route that also you are taking in Jönköping to make sure that people are part of the process and understand why the change is necessary, to have the data available, to see why the urgency is there, etc., is of course also a part of that strategy, or should hopefully be part of it. Yes, so now let's have some question and comments. There's a hand that goes up. Right, first of all, you. This lady in the front, please, if we can get a microphone to her. We rescued a beetle this morning at the hotel, I believe. Is that you? Yes, please.
I recognized you when you walked out. Oh. Hi, I'm Robin Thornton, Walk 21. Great discussion, of course. And I'm interested here at the International Transport Forum with a collection of ministers, national ministers. We're talking about cities, which is critical. It's where a lot of these things are actually applied. What is the role or the impact of national governments on these agendas? Are they enablers? Are they barriers? Do you have to negotiate your way through that? And I'd like to just understand a little bit of that from the experience of the panel in terms of that relationship. Thanks.
Should we start and go this way around? Julien, what's the relationship between Barcelona and government in Spain?
Yeah, well, our owners actually are the City Council of Barcelona and the other cities around Barcelona. But when we have like big new infrastructure investments, we need to do a big investment, for example, to make a metro station more accessible. There we work hand in hand with the national government, because we need, of course, more important financing. So actually, I think we are on the same boat. We are really working towards the same direction. Particularly the city of Barcelona and the metropolitan area of Barcelona, all the other cities surrounding, they are actually asking us as the public transport operator to include this accessibility and this transport for all mission in our services. So we are really pushed forward, and we try to do our best, reorganizing also the company to respond to this need, actually.
Well, the cities or the municipalities of Sweden are quite independent against the state. We are legally obliged to provide some services, while others are optional and decided by local politicians. But some services we are obliged to do that. But the municipality has the right to make independent decisions and tax citizens to finance its activities. So we're quite independent.
And
yes, sometimes the national level empowers cities, but sometimes it also holds them back, I have to say. And we see that in countries where some kind of national planning framework is in place, that this can really be helpful also to create a level playing field, to finance cities if in return they come up with good mobility plans, for example, so that this is very helpful. In other cases, we see that other forces come into play, economic, car industry that needs to be protected. And then sometimes Europe can be an ally to the cities. Of course, there's a subsidiarity principle that they cannot directly intervene on the local level, but sometimes those two levels come together to then lobby the national level. And what you were saying about a seat at the table, sometimes the cities don't get a seat at the table. In the global dialogue, they're not recognized as separate actors. But also when European legislation needs to be translated into national national legislation. Europe says, talk to your cities, consult them, and still too often this is not being done. We also see that when as new mobility services come in, we need to upgrade and update our regulatory frameworks and make sure that the competence is at the right level. Sometimes cities want to intervene in terms of mitigating negative externalities of new mobility services, such as e-scooters, for example, but they don't have the power because it's the national level that can only intervene in that particular area of urban space.
Yeah.
So we also have to make sure that the powers are at the right level for certain interventions.
Right. And thank you. I think that's also very important to understand those links or missing links, perhaps, in those policy processes. So I'm looking for your hands. It's a little bit difficult to spot them at the back of the room, but please do give me a sign if you'd like to ask a question. Or if one of the kind ladies with a microphone can spot, please, then the gentleman there.
Good morning, I'm Peter Kozijn from Belgium. I'm a transport engineer in a wheelchair. One of the things, one of the biggest problems of being in a wheelchair is that you lose that much time on organizational and other things. Do you think that is addressed well on this moment in all policies on inclusion and all policies and on accessibility of transport? Because if I go somewhere, I have to see if I can park my car. I need to see if I can park. I can get on a platform if I'm going. So, for example, in Italy, we have a lot of places where you have reduced where cars are not allowed into the city, but you can get an exemption. I have to do that for every city I want to get in. Those things take a lot of time and a lot of provoke a lot of organizational burden. Is that a point that is taken into account enough, in your opinion?
Maybe we'll address it to you to look at it in a bit of a broader than just one city perspective.
I think it's a very fair and important point that you make, that this is still too challenging, that there are rules out there and the information is lacking, or it's at least not transparent, or it's hard to get to, or it takes a lot of your time. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement in that respect. And also coming back to data, I think that's also, the digitalization of things should help us in making that data more easily available to you and making these processes more transparent, but also to the extent possible to harmonize approaches across cities when it comes to urban vehicle access regulations, for example. We have the specificities of individual cities, but if we would try to work with a common toolkit already, that would make things easier as a start. And then we have the digital integration of different transport modes, mobility as a service, which I think should also be paying attention to the specific needs and challenges that you have and make that information available in a way that is much more seamless. So I think there's a long way to go still in that field.
Maybe just a comment on that. I do agree that information and such things are important. But data only data will not solve problems. If you give me an app in which I can see that I cannot get a bus within 5 hours, that's information, but that does not solve the problem.
No, and I think we also need to recognize that certain needs cannot be met by mass transit, for example, and that we should much better integrate our different options, integrate public transport with shared mobility options that can pick up on specific needs of travelers, whether we're talking about disability, whether we're talking about off-peak periods of remote areas. And if public authorities would invest more in building those bridges, in setting up new public-private partnerships, new business models, and even subsidizing those privately run services that help them reach their equity, accessibility, and inclusion goals, I think that's really the way forward. But it's still early days, and I totally agree that data alone is not going to solve your problems, absolutely not. It should only be an enabler to make sure that what is out there is properly communicated, but sometimes it's just not out there. So
And then you have the big question.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
I think it was, I don't want to cut the conversation short, but we're running out of time for the panel, and maybe it's also something to elaborate further outside of the panel discussion if you're also still available for questions and comments a bit later. But I think the point that you just made is an incredibly important one. Thank you very much for bringing it up to the conversation, because of course it could be misunderstood, although I think you made the point really clearly. It's not about just creating uniform solutions for everybody, but allowing for individuality, and then of course for individual needs of people in a more, in a bigger way than perhaps is currently possible. Maybe just a very quick closing round then on the panel as we're running out of time. If you can give me one short sentence of how can we build these tools and share the resources that you have also created with other cities. Of course, this event is an amazing platform to do so, but how else can we share so that we enable more cities across the globe to also follow suit in the direction that you have done? Should we have a very short closing round and start with you, Uchi?
Yes, well, I think that we need to include human diversity in every city planning and in every new project of public transportation, and from all perspectives, so that we really move towards very accessible cities.
Thank you.
Yeah, I say, like I said earlier, do the bottom-up approach. Take in people as early as possible in the planning process. Then you get good results out in the when it's done.
Thank you.
Zooming out a bit, don't reinvent the wheel, but look at your peers. And that's what we try to do with Polis, peer-to-peer exchange, cities and regions working together and learning from each other's successes as well as failures, because those are very informative as well. And that's what we are trying to facilitate.
Absolutely, and seek these situations to exchange opinions and to collaborate on these topics. So let's have a big round of applause for all of the 5 panelists that were part of this session, please. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights. And now, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies and distinguished guests, it's time to present the Young Researcher of the Year Award, and I'm going to take a different part of the stage for that. And I would like to very warmly welcome to the stage with me Young Tae Kim, the Secretary General of the International Transport Forum. A round of applause, please. Hello. So I'm excited to, of course, announce the winner, which we'll do in a few moments. But before then, I would like to kindly ask you to just share a little bit of information about the award with us.
Yeah. In fact, this award began in 2008, just like this summit, because our ITF summit started in 2008, even though ITF was created in 2006 on the basis of the Dublin Declaration. So this is kind of a trivia quiz. And basically, there are several conditions attached to this award. For example, research itself might focus on any country in the world. So not only about the ITF member countries, but also non-ITF member countries. But the researcher herself came from any countries in the world. But the researcher should belong to an institution or universities in our member countries.
Mm-hmm. And why is this focus on young research important?
I think it's the common sense that we have to watch our young researchers and keep them growing, and we have to involve them and interest them in our work and in our cooperation in the world, because transport relates to a daily life of everybody in the society. And from the young age, if they are becoming more and more interested in these questions that we face, and they will also provide us with the insight and new thinking and new ideas. So that's why we try to be more inclusive by inviting us to join.
Lovely. And was there anything special or anything new about this year that you would like to point out?
No, simply it's becoming much better and better because we have a lot of candidates from around the world, and our judges always say the quality of the research is getting much, much better. So this year especially, we have a new concept and a new context. So you will read the report, and we'll see. It's a bit too difficult to describe in one single phrase. Yeah.
And maybe we can also learn a little bit from the person who won themselves about what was special about their research. So I believe now it is a good time to announce the winner of this year's award.
Yes.
Would you like to do the honors? Or would you like me to? Okay, in that case, we'll have an imaginary drum roll now. And I would like to announce that the winner of this year's Young Research of the Year award goes to Malvika Dixit. Welcome on stage. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. We made
Would you
it
like
a bit
to
smaller.
move a little bit toward me?
We made it a bit smaller to carry it more easily compared to previous years. It was a big,
Downsizing only the size of the award, but not the meaning of the award.
Sometimes small things cost more expensive.
So obviously I'd like to give you the opportunity, as we just said, to share a little bit about your work and to say some words as well. I'll hold this for you if you like. Okay.
Thank you, Secretary General. It is a great honor to receive this award. Thank you to ITF and to all the jury members who considered this research worthy of the award. I would also like to acknowledge all my co-authors in this research, and especially my PhD supervisors at the Delft University of Technology, Niels van Oort, Odette Katz, and Serge Hogendorn, for being always very supportive, not just for this research. So in this research, we looked at the disparity between different income groups when they use public transport services. We looked at the case of Amsterdam, and we looked at how the travel times, journey travel times, the distance traveled, and the fares they pay vary between these income groups, and how the design of public transport routes can either exacerbate or reduce this disparity. As a researcher, I think it's a privilege to undertake research that can be directly used in practice. And in our case, we could only do that because of the support from local authorities in Amsterdam. So I would like to mention them here briefly. Municipality of Amsterdam, the Amsterdam Transport Authority, and the AMS Institute, they not only funded this research, but took an active interest in understanding our results and their implications. I would also like to mention Haverby, the public transport operator, for providing us with the data, the anonymized smart card data that we used for this research. As a personal goal, for me, it is very important that whatever I do has an impact on the society. And this award really helps me further this personal goal by providing more visibility to my work and providing a platform so that it can be used by more people. It also encourages me to keep undertaking such research. So thank you again, ITF. Thank you, Secretary General. I'm absolutely thrilled.
Thank you. A big round of applause for you and your hard work. Malvika, I'll take the microphone. But we want you to leave with full hands, so if you can manage, this is also for you, and another big congratulations. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear excellencies and distinguished guests, this brings us already to the end of this plenary session. And of course, we want to leave you with some closing remarks. And for the first set of closing remarks, I would like to very warmly welcome on stage the current Vice Presidency and future Presidency of the ITF, represented by Jane Peters, Deputy Director of the Deputy Director for International Cooperation at the Department for Transport from the UK. A big round of applause, please.
Good afternoon, Excellencies and distinguished guests. First of all, I would like to thank Morocco for their leadership over the last 12 months of the ITF. This was a period with considerable challenge, as we continued to grapple with COVID. I would also like to pay tribute to the ITF Secretariat, who supported us all throughout the year and guided us towards this successful summit, which is now drawing to a close. The UK is delighted to be taking over the presidency. The theme for the year ahead is transport enabling sustainable economies, and we hope that we can use our presidency to continue to help the ITF undertake work which improves people's transport experience. We have 5 broad campaigns for the year, all of which reflect not only the UK Department for Transport priorities, but also the priorities of the ITF itself. These are greener transport, delivering on COP26 commitments, connected transport, strengthening infrastructure and building back from COVID, innovative transport, safe and resilient transport, and inclusive transport. We will also be using our presidency to re-examine and develop the ITF general rules in a way which would strengthen the organisation and create flexibility to respond to challenges such as COVID and the war in Ukraine. Our Secretary of State, Grant Shapps, at the Ministerial Roundtable on Ukraine yesterday, stated that we would look to identify actions which ITF could take to support the rehabilitation of the transport sector in Ukraine, and we will do this. I am very pleased that ministers yesterday approved requests from Lithuania and Chile to assume the presidencies in 2023-24 and 2024-25 respectively. We look forward to working with both of them to ensure continuity and momentum for the work that we have ahead of us. And finally, we very much look forward to working with our newly elected Secretary General to take forward our presidency. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Jane Peters. And now I would like to welcome back on stage for his closing remarks, Young-tae Kim, ITF Secretary General. Please welcome back on stage.
Dear friends, we have come to the end of 3 wonderful days in which we talked with each other, learned from and inspired each other, and also celebrated with each other, even partied with each other, just a little bit. I know some of you really enjoyed last night. I was tempted, but I had to work. It was heartwarming to be face to face again with so many close partners and friends we hadn't seen in the flesh for 3 years in many cases. In my opening speech, I said that I was torn between joy and sadness. The joy of being here with all of you again in person, and the sadness of meeting in the shadow of war. Yesterday, we heard Oleksandr Kubrakov, Minister for Infrastructure of Ukraine, speaking about what war really means. The destruction of human lives, of whole cities, not least of transport infrastructure. I say it again, this war does the opposite of what we, the transport community, are working for. A large number of ITF member countries have spoken out and taken action in response to this situation. As a transport organizations, we cannot end wars. What we can do instead is help overcome their disastrous effects. In fact, the ITF's precursor, the European Conference of Ministers of Transport, ECMT, was founded for exactly that motive after World War II. So yesterday, in the special informal ministerial meeting, I announced an action plan to develop tools that will help to rebuild Ukraine and address the global impact of the war. In fact, we already started to work on it, and you will see the first result of our efforts very soon. But let me speak about the things that brought joy to my heart as well. We welcome the new ITF member countries, Cambodia, the first country from Southeast Asia. ITF had 59 member countries when I became Secretary General 5 years ago, in 2017. From yesterday, we are 64. Can there be a better benchmark for relevance than a growing membership? Cambodia's accession also makes us more global. We are still working on Asia and Latin America to have more countries with us. The ITF started out in the 1950s as a European organization. Today, it has members on all 5 continents. And I promise that ITF will become more global still in the next 5 years. Another joy was also the response to our chosen topic, transport for inclusive societies. I saw a real concern for the fundamental question of how we can make sure no one is left behind, metaphorically and quite literally. Many of us were still raised in a world where it was the citizens that had to adapt to the transport system. People had to just make do with this technology or with that timetable. In the past 3 days, I sensed how mindsets are shifting. We are slowly accepting that transport has a serving role. It exists to help humans to empower them to the things they need or wish to do. If it achieves that, it will be among the most powerful tools for uniting societies that I can think about. So many people have helped to make this first in-person summit after the global pandemic possible. If I name them all, you will miss the bicycle tour with Mayor Jung this afternoon. But I can't close this summit without bowing, full of gratitude, before our presence country, Morocco. ITF's first presence country from the African continent has really steered the organization through a difficult period. And it has done so with diplomatic skill and circumspection and délicatesse, as one would say in French. Merci beaucoup, le Maroc, shukran. A major vote of thanks is due to our sponsors, as always, and without them, we cannot have reboot the summit at this level after the COVID hiatus. And our regional partners, Saxony, has stood by our side and continued its support. And we truly value this commitment. Danke, Sachsen. And we are also proud of having Capsch Trafficom as our platinum sponsor. And we have a long history of close cooperation with Capsch, initially in our corporate partners board, and now as a platinum partner of the summit. So thank you very much. And as a Korean myself, I'm also delighted that Autocrypt is supporting this event as a gold sponsor. And Autocrypt is not only a summit sponsor, but also supports its ITF project as a corporate partner. So thank you very much. And you all know Waymo as a household name for autonomous driving. And now you know them also as a supporter of the ITF Summit. Thank you to our 2022 silver sponsor. And my final thanks go to TIER, the Summit mobility partner. TIER has proved cool shared scooters outside CCL. And they also provide the bicycles we will be using for the bike tour with the Mayor Jung right after this plenary. The Danke Capsch, Danke Shen. And I would like to give a shout out to our partners in organizing the Pre-Summit Research Day, and the European Commission, and the European Conference of Transport Research Institutes, the US Transportation Research Board, and the World Conference on Transport Research Society. So you bring the combined brain power of the world's best transport researchers to Leipzig. An invaluable asset and huge stimulus to summit discussions, for sure. The team of Congress Center Leipzig is on my mind, and many of them work behind the scenes, and others are constantly present to support us. We owe all of them an applause. Thank you so much. It's not the end. We thank the Compact team also for their impeccable choreographies for our plenary sessions and the gala dinner. And we thank our moderators, many of whom have been working with us for so many years. And always in the spotlight, they are among the most well-prepared and most professional on-stage managers of VIPs that I have known. I want to thank all the partner organizations who have put great effort and resources into being present at the ITF Summit this year, with a side event, an exhibition stand, and outdoor demonstrations. They have all contributed immensely to the richness and diversity that make this event so special. And I owe a huge debt of gratitude to my own team, the staff of ITF. And this year especially, all my staff worked very hard with lots of difficulty. As you can imagine, it may sound a bit arrogant, but my team did an excellent job during these trying times. So, please. And my last but most profound words of thanks go to ITF member countries and to the ministers who set the course of the organization, to their representatives on the ITF Transport Management Board who helped me steer the vessel. And I'm very proud that ministers yesterday re-elected me to a second 5-year term as ITF Secretary General, a very honorable position for myself. I'm happy, but also feel more responsible because there are a lot of work to do. The sea is rough right now, but together we will steer our beautiful organization into calmer waters. Now we are at the end of the 2022 summit, but this is not the end of our conversation. We will return home. Let us continue to do whatever we can to overcome the divisions that plague our societies by making it easier for citizens to come together. I want us to come together again in May 2023. From 24 to 26 May, the ITF Summit 2023 will explore how transport can enable sustainable economies in Leipzig, here again. Please mark your diaries right now. As we leave Leipzig, the ITF presidency passes from Morocco to the United Kingdom. The UK has always proven itself as a very active, able vice presidency, and I look forward to working with our British friends. Now it's time to say goodbye, but at this stage, I suddenly think about one German saying, Ende gut, alles gut. Thank you all again for coming, and have a safe journey home. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Young Tae Kim. It's been an absolute honor to host this session. And yes, this is the end of the plenary. I just want to point you toward 2 more program items. One has already been announced, that is the bicycle ride with the mayor of Leipzig that is going to start after the plenary session. I hope you all have a lot of fun exploring the city that way. And we also have a gender networking lunch on transport for inclusive societies from a gender perspective, still in the program for you. This networking lunch is organized by ITF and UITP and will take place in the room MP3 on level 0. It's going to include remarkable women such as the Colombian Minister for Transport and Carla Gonzalez of the World Bank and many others who are going to lead the discussion at this networking lunch. So I hope you enjoy both these program points. I hope you have safe travels home and look forward to seeing you next year in May.